And overtime in California is a tough one to do. It's one of the strictest in the nation, and they're very adamant about you paying it correctly. So we're going to be looking at the laws themselves of overtime in California, and we're going to be looking at all of the items that they use in order to calculate overtime. For example, what is a work week? What is a work day? What are hours worked? The definition of regular rate of pay. What do I pay somebody for overtime if they're working at multiple rates during the work week? How do I handle piece workers and commission payments? Are there differences on the wage order for overtime? What about tip credit? What about meals and rest period sanctions? Do I include those when I have to calculate overtime? Can an employee sign off to not get overtime, such as for compensatory time off or what we call comp time? And can an employee agree to work for make-up time? In other words, if I work 12 hours or 11 hours or 10 hours today, can I take 2 hours off tomorrow? So these are all the things that we're going to be looking at in the next 75 minutes or so. So first of all, we have to understand that even though California has its own unique set of wage and hour laws, it's still, if you're an employer in California with employees in California, you still have to follow the federal rules. Whether they're equal to California or less than California is the decision you have to make. Or if they're greater than California, or maybe it's an area that California doesn't address, or California equals the definition that the federal is using. So let's first of all look at the definition of overtime under the federal law. Now the federal law is the Fair Labor Standards Act. It acted in 1938. It was written by a woman named Frances Perkins. Now why is this important for you to know as a payroll person, other than as a unique history lesson? Well, when you look at overtime in California under the federal rules, wherever, you have to understand the time and the wherewithal that was going on at the time these laws were written. They were all basically written in about 1938. And so at that time, there was no such thing as overtime. So it wasn't like they just said, oh, you know how that state over there is doing it? Let's do it the same way. Or you know how the federal government does it? We'll just do it the same way. But there wasn't any of the same way. So what they had to do was they had to create the concept of overtime. And everybody paid the same way. So everybody basically, as long as you weren't violating wage, anything, you basically, if somebody made $1 an hour, which in 1938 was